Welcome to the Women on the Wall Communication Team Conference Call. One thing, Karen, that you said, you have to look at legislation and you have to look at funding. And the funding for the school choice movement is so massive. And the narrative of school choice is so well funded. And what's interesting is that it's funded in large part by Bush's organization, Jeb Bush's organization, who was for the Common Core. But yet I have, conservative legislators where I'm going to town halls and they're bringing in people from Jeb Bush's organization as the experts on education. And these are the same people that said no to the Common Core. So Karen, can you start first? And then Linda, I want to get your take. But give us a little history about why it is so hard if you come out against school choice. You've got a target on your back. Am I correct on that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think part of it is because the reformers, which are nonpartisan for the most part, have a specific goal. They're looking for a new type of education system that is seamless from cradle to career, built on portable, stackable credentials for career pathways. And so they know the end game. What they do very well, very cleverly, is they frame the argument in narratives that make it palatable to whoever is listening that needs to be convinced. So for a Republican, they talk about choice and free markets and competition. But yet when I talk to a Republican on the choice issue and I say, explain to me how the state competing with itself is competition. They control the funding, therefore they get to pick the winner and the loser. That's not competition, that's cannibalization. So they're creating a choice scenario, funding them both, starting to drain the funding in one, continue to fund the other, well, then you know who's going to win and who's going to lose. So it's very hard to come against choice because you look like you're coming against competition. You're coming against vocabulary, but you're not coming against truth. And that's the problem. So when you present the choice argument to a legislature, I would be foolish to say I'm anti-choice. But really what I'm anti is what they define as choice. Their definition of choice is not what you and I hear. So we hear something like school choice, and we think that means that we are truly going to get a choice. No, it really doesn't mean that. And if you look at schools like the Detroit Public Schools or in New Orleans, where there is no choice, and in fact, I believe it was either our governor or our state superintendent who said there are too many choices in Detroit. Now we need to start limiting them. And when you look at some of the people who are behind it, like the Jeb Bush Foundation, back in when they were promoting it in Florida, they were making kids choose their career majors by the 8th, no later than the 9th grade, and Jobs for the Future, which is another one that is promoting this, and the credentialing behind it. Here's a quote from them. The U.S. education system at the secondary level is driven by individual states and local districts, making it more difficult to establish a nationwide system of credentialing that is what is in place in other countries where education is often managed and run at the federal level. So they're basically telling you in the fine print of their PDFs, which few of the politicians read, but we do, the definition of what they mean by choice. And so we have a target on our back because these people have run on school choice, and we're telling them, but that's not the definition, and now they're in a conundrum. And that's where I'm sympathetic to Ted Cruz and some of the others, because they've bought into an idea they thought they believed in, but what they're finding out is the people who, like Linda and I and you, who read the PDFs are saying, but that's not what it means. Intellectual honesty says, I'm now faced with a decision. Do I go with what the facts say in these documentation, or do I go with what the lobbyists are telling me, what the donors are telling me, what the think tanks are telling me that is necessary? And that's a real choice. That's the choice before the politicians, and it's a hard choice. It takes courage to go up against donors. It takes courage to stand up for the Constitution when your fellow legislator is saying, wait a minute, you're coming against school choice? That's political suicide. And it is. And that's why we have a target on our back, because as long as everybody keeps quiet and nobody exposes the true definition and the lie, then everybody can keep pretending until it's too late. And my idea is you defeat, don't repeal. And we've lost too many arguments, too many campaigns. Common Core was in place, and we got 45 states in because nobody wanted to believe what was really happening. And now that they see it, we're all trying to repeal it. Well, let's defeat the idea, not just the bill. And to do that takes courage. And yeah, those first one of us, we're going to take a lot of hits. I take none of it personally, and it's unfortunate that they don't want to engage in the argument, but it also is very, very telling because it says that they really don't have a strong argument.
That's right. Linda, I want to get your take.
Well, very much I agree with what Karen has said. Certainly, another aspect to it is the think tanks, the conservative organizations and groups that have bought into the concepts. Milton Friedman's free enterprise, competition, builds excellence. All of these statements that we know are true in business. And yet, when it's applied to a public school system with choice and the dismantling of the public schools that is going on and the unfair comparisons with schools that have private schools that have no regulation in certain areas that public schools do have. They have more control over who they admit and who they keep in their school. There are all kinds of things that are being done that are totally destructive to a public school system that our parents, our grandparents, really paid into, helped to build, while our local school boards are being removed in the situation where private schools and charter schools are brought in. That is losing representation and the voice of the parent and the community. So there are a lot of aspects to this that happen when you buy into the idea that public education is so horrible and so destroyed that we've got to replace it with choice, and here you have all of these choices. But as Karen said, we find that when you get into the details and the regulations that are written in, we are finding that we end up with the same center of accreditation, certification, admittance testing, approvals here, there, and everywhere that are really a centralized control of the system. It's not going to be any different in the long run. And people need to see that they're not getting freedom. They're walking into more regulation. I know this bill we're going to talk about has the word accredited schools. We have to say who is doing the accrediting. That's where outcomes-based education was in Oklahoma in 1994. It was in the accreditation system of North Central Accreditation Association. And they take entities like North Central, which has been around for 100 years, ACT testing, which is now Common Core aligned, which has been around, everyone's accepted it. It's part of the, I will just call it, marketing strategy, that we have already accepted certain things to be good or true, and we don't question it automatically. We accept it, like ACT testing, bring it in, and then find out it's not what you thought, as Karen just said. People are being deceived because they're not doing due diligence research on what these details mean, what they really mean.
Once again, welcome to the Women